Good evening, everybody. Good evening. I'm Deb Digas, the Executive Director for United Way of Licking County, and I want to thank you for coming out. I know it's a really cold evening out there, and some of you, when the lights go down and it's this cold, you just want to go home and get warm and stay in. So I just want to acknowledge the extra effort that it takes to come and be a part of a conversation this evening that's really important for all of us to be a part of this evening and to learn more about a topic that's really important as we think about housing in Licking County. Many of you are aware that several months ago, we showed a film called Beyond the Bridge. And at that showing, we promised that we would have three conversations, that we would continue our learning opportunities around housing, particularly as we think about what that looks like for Licking County. And so we held the first conversation a couple of months ago as we looked at the ALICE demographic, and we took a look at the economic factors that really play a role in leading to housing instability for so many. So many things are out of a price range that many people can afford. Right here in Licking County, 41% of our residents are struggling paycheck to paycheck. They have to make difficult decisions every single day. Do I pay for the rent? Do I pay for the health care? Do I pay for the child care? Do I pay for food, medical care? And we could go on. We've all heard those stories. So we took a deeper dive in looking at what some of those actual costs are for the ALICE demographic in Licking County. Tonight, we're going to continue the conversation as we think about housing instability and look at a very important type of housing that's been identified as being really important for Licking County to think about. Several years ago, coming out of the end of 20 and the beginning of 2021, our county engaged in a broader conversation about eliminating chronic homelessness. We talked a lot about affordable housing. That was one of the three areas that we focused on. We know that affordable housing means different things for different people. For some people, having affordable housing or stable housing also requires supportive housing. And so tonight we're going to learn more about that from all of these experts who are sitting up here with us, and I'm not going to introduce them. They're going to introduce themselves to you. I want to encourage you throughout the evening, if you have questions, there are slips of paper on your table. Please take a moment, write down the questions, because we want to allow for some time from the audience to engage our panelists in questions that you might have. And likewise, we hope that all of you will learn something this evening, as well as our panelists. Maybe our panelists will learn some things from one another here tonight as well. We want you to keep an open mind as you hear things, and be willing to listen to one another. Even if you don't agree to one another, listen to one another, have a open dialogue with each other, with the folks at your table, and even after you leave here this evening. We know that supportive housing comes with a lot of stigma, myths, and sometimes just really disinformation about what it is, and all of those things that play a role in supportive housing. So with that being said, I'm going to turn the rest of the evening over to Corey Stutz, our Community Impact Director, and he's going to lead our panel discussion this evening. And again, thank you so much for being here. I'll be in the back, and we hope to end by about 8 o'clock, but stick around if you want to have some further discussion. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you, Deb, and thanks to all of you for coming out tonight. definitely not ideal weather for this, and there are a lot of other things that are happening tonight as well, so I really appreciate you taking time to join us for this discussion. So before we get started, Deb did mention this is a continuation of a series of events following the Beyond the Bridge screening that we had in October. And I definitely want to give some recognition to our event sponsors. These follow-ups are sponsored by First Presbyterian Church of Granville, so we're certainly grateful to them. And there's continued support from the Edwards Group at Morgan Stanley, Licking Memorial Health Systems, Licking County Coalition for Housing, Ohio, Licking County Chamber of Commerce, and Second Presbyterian Church, who all sponsored the screening. So let's give them a round of applause for making these possible. Before we dive into the conversation, we wanted to kind of make sure that we're all on the same playing field with understanding of terminology that we use. So if you didn't grab one of these papers off of that table over there, this has some definitions so that when we talk about supportive housing or affordable housing, we all understand what that means. Supportive housing, and this is from CSH, so a great definition. Supportive housing combines affordable housing with support services that help people who face the most complex challenges to live with stability, autonomy, and dignity. Supportive housing is an innovative and data-driven solution that helps people break the cycle of homelessness and thrive. When we talk about affordable housing, as Deb said, sometimes that can feel different for different people. In general, there is a definition for what it means for housing to be affordable through HUD. And affordable housing is generally defined as housing which the occupant is paying no more than 30% of their gross income for housing costs, including utilities. Different times we see that being more or less attainable for folks. But when we mention affordable housing, a lot of housing providers will specifically use that definition. So we want us all to be aware of what that means. There's some other great information on that sheet as well. So if you didn't grab one on your way in, please make sure you get one before you head out tonight. And with that, we are going to dive into our discussion. So I want to give a big welcome to our panelists. Unfortunately, we only have one mic, so we'll have to just pass it around and share. So I'm going to have our panelists introduce themselves, say who they are, what organization they're representing, and the work that they do there. So we'll start down here with Jody. Just pass it down.
Thank you. So should I stand or are we okay with sitting?
Sitting's probably fine.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Jody Hall Arthur. I'm the director of the Licking Metropolitan Housing Authority. We, of course, by name, the Housing Authority, we provide direct housing assistance from the federal government in the form of housing choice vouchers. And with those vouchers, it is housing choice. So that way the participant can live in the unit of their choice. Our jurisdiction is Licking County and Gratiot. Do you want me to give a little more information?
Yeah, whenever you want.
Okay. All right. We have the large program is the Housing Choice Voucher Program. It's housing assistance, and we serve, I would say, 2,800 to 3,000 people in Licking County and Gratiot. We also have partnerships, one with the Columbus Metropolitan Housing Authority. We have an agreement contract with them where they just acquired a 264 unit new apartment community in Reynoldsburg, which is in our jurisdiction. So in order for them to come into our jurisdiction, they have to, I guess, get our approval. And it's a wonderful opportunity because voucher holders could live, if it's affordable under certain conditions, they could live in this new apartment community. And we have many people on our program that work. The opportunities to find employment living in Reynoldsburg would be there would be a vast number of opportunities there. Excuse me. We also are preserving affordable housing We have a 99 unit, 7-story building on Church Street. You've probably seen all the construction going on around there. That was the only actual public housing we had, and I knew the building was aging and there would never be enough capital improvement funds to renovate that building. So we're in a different funding stream now, a different funding platform. It will become project-based vouchers. They stay with the project. But I think I'm looking at a lot of familiar faces that have seen some of our renovated units, and I think they would agree that they're just beautiful. They really are. It doesn't even look like the same place. So we have them, and we also partner with other agencies we do have a couple small programs through the continuum of care. That's funding that's passed down through the balance of state. And the other agencies that we partner with, they provide the services and we provide the permanent housing. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Excellent. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. My name is Ann Roach. I'm a staff attorney in our Newark office at Legal Aid. We used to be known as Souls. People still call us that, but officially now we're Legal Aid of Southeast and Central Ohio. And we do a wide range of civil cases only that are related to people's living in poverty, experiences in poverty. Housing is just one of them. It happens to be my favorite. So a lot of the housing stuff that we do is eviction defense, but also foreclosures, some conditions cases. I would say those are the big three things though: evictions, foreclosures, and then to a lesser extent, conditions issues. We also deal with things like consumer issues, education cases for kids, some family law. I think I said consumer, record stealing, driver's license, people being terminated from Medicaid, Medicare, public benefits, things like that. Wills, estates, a wide range, but housing is probably a third of what we do. And I think we all in this room know why that's important. All those things create barriers for housing and vice versa. So, keeping people with roofs over their heads and then trying to make sure that those are livable places is critical. So appreciate everyone being here today.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you all for being present. My name is Celia, Kendall, and I see a lot of familiar faces in the room, but I am, for those who don't know, I represent Beacon 360 Management as the Chief Executive Officer. So we are a not-for-profit real estate management and development firm headquartered in Columbus, but also I think one of the larger housing providers throughout Licking County. We operate a number of communities. I think throughout Licking County, we operate 800 units, but we are a statewide organization. So we have properties in Cleveland, Tiffin, Toledo, Columbus, Zanesville, Mount Vernon, just really kind of spread all across the state. And we specialize in the type of housing that we like to call people first. And that just simply means that we, since 2017, have begun to deepen our penetration into permanent supportive housing, which we're going to be talking about quite a bit this evening. Because as landlords who operate programs that are like traditional Section 8 programs, what we encounter all too often are destabilizing conditions that threaten our ability to keep people stably housed. One of the things I like to say a lot is it's one thing to put someone in housing, but it's a whole other thing when someone has experienced complex trauma to keep them in it. And as a person, as an agency who have unfortunately had to put people through the eviction process, I think one of the things that our board saw is that we could do this better. And the way that we endeavor to go about that work is through the cultivation of more permanent supportive housing, and then also that people first management approach, that is that trauma informed management approach. Some of the communities that we're probably most known for are our Harriet's Hope community, which is housing for human trafficking victims. It is the 2025 Charles Edson Tax Credit Award winning community. So we're super excited about that. It is the first ever in the nation housing program to provide federal subsidy and state subsidy that supports human trafficking victims exclusively. So we also operate some programs for transition age youth. So young people exiting the foster care system, age 18 to 24. We are getting ready to do a project for reentering citizens. So we do a lot of different types of housing with a special focus on those folks who have experienced complex trauma. That's our wheelhouse, and we're really proud to be able to have the opportunity to do the work.
Good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing? I'm not gonna lie, I texted Emma this morning and said, is this thing on? Because my kid can't go to school today because it's too cold, So God bless all of you for coming out and braving the cold to have this really important discussion, because the reality is making sure you're housed and your neighbors are housed benefits everybody. So my name is Leah Werner. I work for CSH. The quote that Corey showed about what supportive housing is. CSH stands for Corporation for Supportive Housing. We're a young adult. We're 34 years old. We're a national organization. We have 20 state-based offices across the country. I'm the director of the Ohio, Kentucky, and Tennessee program. Our entire North Star is how to elevate supportive housing as a key housing intervention for the most marginalized communities across the country. Supportive housing as an intervention is for folks who desperately need the affordability and but for the services would not be able to maintain their housing. And if we can keep people housed, then the benefits in physical health, mental health, reunification with families, all of those things materialize, including becoming better neighbors when we're able to focus on housing retention. So that is our mission. That is our North Star. And we do it through training and technical assistance, why I'm here tonight. We do it through policy and advocacy. And if you've been keeping track of things going on at the federal level, you can probably guess we're up to our eyeballs in changes in policy and funding. We're a lender. So we lend money into mission-aligned projects. We have a national training team. So all of these wheels turning speak to how can we help you? How can we help Licking County? How can we help the state of Ohio? How can we help the United States as a whole address the 1.2 million people who are freezing tonight, and get them the housing and the resources they need to live their best life. So I'm super excited to have this conversation with you tonight. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Trina. I'm the Executive Director for the Licking County Coalition for Housing. And I've been doing this work since 2011, so I've been around the housing world for a while. LCCH operates 3 different types of housing programs, and we'll go into more detail about those here in a little bit. But within those 3 types, I've got 13 different programs. And in those 13 different programs, I have 17 case managers. And that ensures that anybody that comes into one of our programs gets a case manager to help them with that supportive service side of things. It is so important. Their work is so heavy, and oftentimes, they burn out a little bit just because of the crisis we deal with on a daily basis. But I have an amazing team that right now in Licking County has 185 households in a program. We serve 18 counties, which a lot of people don't know, but our focus is now and will always be Licking County. That's where we started. But because we've done such a good job in Licking County, we've been asked to broaden our reach. And so we've entered other counties to take our programming and our models into those other counties. So we'll talk more about our different types of housing programs and things like that shortly, but I just wanted to introduce myself. Thanks.
All right, thank you all. So now that we know who our panelists are, what organizations they are from, and what they do, we really want to dive into the meat of tonight's discussion. So the event tonight is called Obstacles and Opportunities. And so we want to talk about, what are the opportunities that are present in Licking County for housing services for those who either they are completely unsheltered, or if they are at risk of losing their housing or need some support services to maintain their housing. What opportunities are there? We want to be very clear to make sure that we know what is available within the housing system right now, because it's easy for all of us to focus on the folks who are currently unhoused, and certainly we want to make sure that we get them services, but we don't want to discredit the work that has been done and the folks that are currently housed and what's available, so that we know how we can work to support that system as well as exploring new opportunities. So with that said, we're going to move on to our local housing providers first, just to give you an idea of the flow, so that they can talk about what types of housing they provide here in Licking County, what are the opportunities that folks have to take advantage of those services, and maybe what kind of obstacles they encounter. And that's probably going to be different from provider to provider. So we will start. Mike, back to Trina, if you don't mind, and take it away.
All right, well, that's easy. Okay, so I talked about, we have 3 different types of programs at LCCH. One of those being transitional housing, the second one being rapid rehousing, and the third one is permanent supportive housing, which is kind of the focus of tonight. But I'm going to talk a little bit about each of those. And as I said, right now we have 185 households housed here in Licking County, and that is really our capacity, and that is because of the number of case managers. I can't keep adding new cases when they are providing such intense case management to their clients and things like that. And also, let's face it, there's not a lot of open housing right now to move people into. So right now we have 119 households that are waiting to get into one of our programs. And so, as you can see, we're taking care of more than half of the need, but there's still 119 households that are just waiting. And then there's probably more that either don't know about us or we haven't reached, been able to find, or different things like that. So transitional housing is what the agency was founded on 30+ years ago. We started out with like 4 units, and now we have 21 units of regular transitional housing, which people come in and it's just as it sounds, it's a transitional move for them. They don't stay there. They work on barriers, and then at the end, we help them find somebody that's willing to rent to them, that they can sustain, and that is safe and stable for them. So transitional housing, 21 units there. I've got 5 units specifically for veterans. So homeless veterans can come in, they can get into transitional housing, and we work with them closely on barriers and things. That's why you can't sign a lease with a landlord, or what their biggest obstacles are. We also have the transitional housing for youth, 18 to 24-year-old, and a 4th one for domestic violence victims. All of those are full. And as soon as we exit somebody out, within 2 days, we're moving somebody in. So we don't let units sit empty. All of those units we lease, the coalition leases in our name, and then we sublet them to the clients. So we get to put in there who we want. So it might be someone that landlord normally wouldn't put in one of their units, but because we're the lease, we hold the lease, we get to pick. So making that sale to some landlords is a little difficult, but we've been highly successful in because of the program and the success it's seen. We usually house into permanent housing about 75 to 80% of the people exiting the program. So some people just aren't ready, and we find that out pretty quickly when they move in and don't abide by a normal lease or can't abide by rules. And unfortunately, there are times we have to exit people out and they go back into homelessness. But the thing is at LCCH is we're housing first. So as soon as they come back to our door, we get them back on the prioritization list, and we start working with them again to hopefully find out when they're ready. The second type is rapid rehousing. And what that is when a client can find a landlord that's willing to sign a lease directly with them. So we help them find an apartment, or they find their own apartment, and then they're assigned a case manager. We help with deposit and rent up to 2 years. And so that program itself is also highly successful because once the people finish the program, they get to stay. So hopefully by the time that they're in the program, by the time they're ready to exit, they can afford the unit that they're in. So we don't have to find them another unit or anything like that. It's a very successful program. And again, that case management part is what makes it so successful. Because anybody that's homeless, there's a reason, whatever that reason may be, there's a barrier to why they can't get housing and maintain housing. So case manager really works with them with a real budget. If somebody smokes, we want that in their budget because we know that's where money is going to go. But we want them to see that they can afford their rent and they can afford, their cigarettes or whatever else thing they choose to buy. So with that, I have rapid rehousing for anybody, families with minor children, a specific program for them, one for youth, 18 to 24-year-olds, one for domestic violence victims, and we have a huge veterans rapid rehousing program. In that program, we serve about 110 veteran households a year. And so back years ago, I believe it was Obama said no veteran should be homeless. And they meant it, and they have thrown a lot of money into that program. So anybody in here, if you know of a veteran that's homeless, please send them our way because we have the funds to help them out. Literally, no veteran in Lincoln County should be homeless. And then finally, we have permanent supportive housing. And it is exactly as it sounds. It is a permanent solution for people with some kind of disability. 99% of the folks in our permanent supportive housing programs have a mental illness. The thing with that is we don't have a lot of turnover. So we have 15 units for just regular population. We started that 2 years ago and it filled up within 2 months. And those people have maintained housing. And these are people that had been on the street for more than a year. So they're not used to being housed. So you're teaching them how to be housed. You're teaching them life skills. You're teaching them all kinds of different things. And that case manager works very intensely. Her caseload is 15, and that's all she can handle because every day she is maintaining contact with those 15 households. She's taking people to their lab appointments for their addiction. She's taking people to doctor visits or employment opportunities and things like that. So her job is to focus on those 15 households. We had one household that came in that was homeless for 3 years. 3 years of living on the street, wondering when they were going to be able to find housing. We were able to locate housing for them. We got her and her partner moved in. And unfortunately, about 6 months after she moved in, she passed away. Tragic, yes. However, she did not pass away on the street because she was housed with the support she needed in order to be securely housed. We've had a second person pass away in that program, and it's hard for the case manager because she developed such a relationship. But in the end, what we remind ourselves is that person had the dignity of being housed, which everybody deserves. And so that's our regular permanent supportive housing. We also have what's called HOPWA, which is housing opportunities for people with AIDS. And we operate about 16 units of permanent supportive housing for that population specific. We do serve Licking and Franklin County in that program. Again, a lot of times people with AIDS have other mental illness or other physical illness that is hard for them to maintain employment and things like that. So another very important program that we have that we operate. And finally, thanks to the Corporation for Supportive Housing, we have reentry housing where people come out of the state prison and we get a referral from CSH and they work with my amazing reentry team and we get them housed. We actually had somebody in that program for almost 10 years. And then she finally got a subsidized apartment and moved out on her own. And we were so excited for her because again, she was in prison, came directly into our program, received housing and supportive services, and was able to maintain that for almost 10 years. And then exited to a permanent destination. We still hear from her. We get cards, we get notes, but those are the main programs that we operate. We also get some homelessness prevention dollars, not enough. But if somebody's facing eviction or something like that, there's sometimes that we can help them prevent that addiction and prevent them from becoming homeless. There's never enough of those dollars. During COVID, we've seen this huge influx of dollars to keep people housed during the COVID era. And once those dollars ran out, there's just nothing to follow up with it. So homeless prevention is something we do, we just don't have enough. And those dollars usually run out pretty quick. So I think that's about it.
That's it.
That's all.
Just a few programs.
All right, thank you so much, Trina. Lots of really great information, and it's good to hear the numbers of households that you have that are housed and some of those success stories. Even though we know there are still a lot of households that are on the wait list. So that just means there's opportunities for us to do work and find more housing solutions. So next, I would like to ask Celia Kendall to talk about the work that Beacon 360 does in Licking County, the opportunities that there are for folks to engage with housing services, and also some obstacles that you face in your organization.
So our profile in Licking County is a bit more straightforward. We operate multifamily housing, elderly housing. Most of the communities in our portfolio of about 800 units in the county are elderly communities. All of our permanent supportive housing is in Columbus, Toledo. But we have tried to create something of a framework for supportive housing that falls outside of the permanent supportive housing framework through our partnership with Licking Memorial Healthcare Systems and one of our larger senior communities here, Washington Square Plaza. We partnered with them to put a healthcare clinic in the ground level of that community, reducing barriers to access for those folks. So case management comes into that community along with healthcare providers to provide various services. Again, we have that multifamily community, so about 124 units of multifamily housing, and then a variety of programs that serve individuals with disabilities. So that's our framework. And then in terms of, what the obstacles are, you all in the room are here because you're interested in housing. So I'll assume that you have some level of understanding that of some of the challenges that can lead to someone being evicted. They can be things like, someone falling behind in their rent. There can be some behavioral health challenges. There can be interpersonal relationship dynamics that pose a problem for other neighbors, substance abuse disorder, that often manifests in a way that is problematic at the community or poses a threat to the environment of where that individual or family may be living. What we're challenged with is the community appetite in the larger community for creating solutions that target those issues, right? We've got, we've got a shortage in the mainstream housing. So we've got a shortage in elderly housing, shortage in multifamily housing. But for our firm, helping people, once we put them in the housing, to be able to stay there when there's a complex mental health issue, right? Or when they've fallen behind in their rent and there's no one to talk to about that person, and there's not that emergency rental assistance at levels that it has been in the past. That's really difficult. And I think, as Trina pointed out, the wear and tear on the case managers is real. And so we see an opportunity in the development of permanent supportive housing throughout the county to reduce that gap, to eliminate that, to create housing that will put folks like Trina's case managers in the project, so they're not necessarily schlepping about the community, trying to figure out how they're going to help the folks on their caseload to be able to stay in housing. I hope that we get to talk a little bit more about housing, how permanent supportive housing operates in practice. And I know Leah is a specialist in this space, but when there is a case manager, when there is a substance abuse treatment services provider in the development, in the facility, when someone is having a crisis, you have nothing more to do than to go downstairs or to go to that provider who's already linked, already engaged, to be able to mitigate that issue. And then thusly, through cooperation with management, you're able to avoid costly evictions, but also more importantly, evictions that threaten to destabilize an individual, and in a lot of cases, families, right? We've got an obligation to a younger generation who is coming up oftentimes in these housing environments that as a community, I think that we could be doing more to meet. So that would be my answer to that.
All right, thank you so much for all of that information, and we will certainly dive more into what supportive housing looks like and works. I'm sure Leah is raring and ready to go to talk about that in just a bit. Before that, though, I would like to pass the mic over to Jody to talk about how the Licking Metropolitan Housing Authority provides opportunities through their housing, as well as some obstacles that you face with your organization and what it provides as well.
Thank you for it. Honestly, we have minimal supportive housing. Our focus is more on permanent housing. And that's why it's so important to work with related agencies like the smaller programs that we have through the continuum of care, because they might be providing the supportive services and we can provide the housing. I don't want to get too detailed here, but I do want to tell you about some of the vouchers that were given through the Department of Housing and Urban Development. I did describe the housing choice vouchers a little bit ago, and they're wonderful because they are just for that housing choice. But we also have other specialized voucher programs, the mainstream. We have several vouchers for that program, and that is non-elderly disabled person with disabilities and homeless or at risk of homeless or at risk of institutionalization. I'm looking at my coworker to make sure I get this right. Okay, the other one is family unification program, which is just that, families who may have the children removed from the home and they have a case plan, and the goal is reunification. The first primary goal in that list would be housing. So that's where we come in. We have non-elderly disabled voucher program for the head or co-head being non-elderly disabled. We also have a BASH program, the same that Trina was talking about. We have about 35 veteran families on that program, and we also house, I believe it's still close to 50% veterans at our newly renovated terrace gardens. So we do, to me, the most important thing is to open the line of communication between all related agencies and all persons who are interested in this topic. Because together, once we start talking about the services that we might have or the ideas that we have, we can come together, and we are stronger in numbers. So you come together and you can find solutions to these problems. Honestly, we have to operate very efficiently, and we run very lean. We're proud to say that we can provide what we do provide with minimal staff, that that's the way we can provide it. And I have staff there that truly care. We have homeless individuals and families that they come across daily or regularly, if not daily. And the hardest part, I think, for the staff and for me is we do not have any emergency assistance. The vouchers that we have, you have to wait. There's a waiting list. And the last time we opened the waiting list and took applications, I think we had 2,000, was it, Suzanne? 2,000 applications on the waiting list. And so the wait is very long, 2 to 3 years normally, sometimes 4 years. We've been able to turn over some vouchers much quicker this time than we had. We got the okay from basically from headquarters to go ahead and ramp up, and so we did. And their first time ever, I've been with the Housing Authority many years and I've never seen this until just recently, but we opened the list of the 2,000 and some of those people or families on the list were housed within 6 months, 4 months, compared to 2 to 4 years. So I think that's what we need to do is just keep that momentum up. That's really all I have to say.
All right, thank you, Jody. Certainly, we know there are other organizations that are providing housing in the community, but we wanted to give an idea of what we have here locally through the organizations that are represented, to know what opportunities they have to provide units to folks who are in need of housing, some of the common obstacles that they face. But we know that housing is more than just units. There are services, there are other things that go into that. So I'm really happy to have Anne with us because, as she mentioned earlier, she does do a lot of work and enjoys doing work with folks who are legally needing some advice or someone to advocate for them or provide them some guidance with housing, especially when it comes to evictions or whatever the issues might be. So Anne, if you wouldn't mind, just giving a bit of information about maybe a little bit deeper into the work that you do with housing, what resources are available, what opportunities that might help someone who is either trying to maintain their housing or find housing, and what are some common obstacles that folks face?
Sure. Okay, so we can start with the positive. I would say one of our great assets in this county is our Office of Legal Aid. We have 6 full-time attorneys and 2 part-time attorneys for Licking, Knox, Muskingum, and Perry, all sorts of poverty law cases for those 4 counties, not just housing. So the biggest thing we do is direct representation, defending clients in their cases. But we also try to expand our, resources, things like escrow packets, information on our website. We're actually trying right now to overhaul everything and make it more clear, plain language. So that it's understandable even, to people with limited education, reading ability, all those sorts of things. And last year, year before, recently, we launched a housing hotline for all 36 of our counties, where basically things that it's not a case that we would take necessarily, but they can, within certain times, they can call, get an appointment with one of our attorneys to just talk out an issue for hopefully about 20 minutes, try to prevent cases from being filed. Because really, the lack of information is one of the big obstacles people have. Nobody's rights are self-enforcing, especially in housing. It is a use it or lose it situation. And all the time we see places that are horrific conditions, but people don't feel like they have an option. They know the supply is so limited that they don't want to speak out and have, retaliation against them, that they just suffer through horrible conditions, making repairs themselves that they can't really afford until they get so behind and the situation snowballs so badly that then they're behind on rent. Well, once you're behind on rent, you can't escrow. And people simply don't know that. It's not intuitive. A lot of this is not intuitive, and that's why lawyers exist, for better or for worse. The process itself for escrow, again, if you're current on rent and you understand somehow that the complicated process, it's effective, but even that has a lot of limitations. For example, if it's subsidized housing or even, private housing with a voucher, you can escrow your rent, but if the landlord is in a county like Licking, where the supply is pretty limited, they know they don't have a huge incentive, they can wait you out in a lot of cases. So again, the incentives reflect the power imbalances in the world. Again, supply, I'm gonna try not to say that 30 times, but the supply of housing, the stock of housing, it's aging housing, that is a huge barrier. Other, kind of myths that I could just spend my whole life, trying to debunk, unfortunately, is that, people can't be, evicted if they're elderly or disabled. I have to disabuse people of that notion all the time. You definitely can, and most people are, elderly or disabled and do get evicted. That's not protected by law in any sort of way. Age is not a protected class, under federal or Ohio law. So if there are otherwise grounds for someone to be evicted, that's not going to protect you. Disability is a protected class. And, you know, as we age, we're more likely to become disabled in some way, often. But again, those are two very different things. Again, the Venn diagram of elderly and disabled is not, you know, certainly not a circle in any way. So anyway, people being vulnerable does not necessarily mean that they're protected. And a lot of times people think, oh, well, I'll just go to court and I'll explain to the judge my situation. That's terrible. I lost my job. My husband abused me and then left. I just can't afford it. When that's true, that's not, you know, the court is bound to uphold the law. The law does not, again, make exceptions necessarily for those things. So, knowing what your rights are and are not is critical. And even when it's a losing case, it can help if you have someone, like an attorney, you know, defending you, trying to negotiate something. I would say actually, before I get to that, another myth I would love to bust again, because it would prevent, hopefully, a lot of cases, is that people think that once they get a notice to leave, they just do it. They just leave, they grab their most essential stuff, and then they just leave. Sometimes, they'll leave the keys just in the house, but they don't notify the landlord, at least not in writing. They say, oh, well, they know. Okay, that's not a provable thing. So they don't do the 3 required things, or at least provably do the 3 required things to prove that they have vacated. And if you are not there in court to prove that those 3 things happened, then it can be granted, again, if the property manager doesn't know for sure. If you vacated, then they're gonna go ahead and request, the court grant them the property back, because they don't know. So we see a lot of times, I would guess maybe a third, conservatively, I would guess about a third of people do not show up to their evictions. And I would guess a good chunk of those are because they assume, oh, it'll be dismissed, I moved out. And that's just not the case necessarily. On the other side, I think one of the big obstacles to more housing being available is a lot of myths that, oh, the law favors tenants and you have squatters' rights and all these things that are just simply not the case. There's a lot of information that applies to other states that's available. The law very much reflects society for better and for worse. We do not have extremely protective tenant rights, such that landlords should be worried that, oh, I'll lose money. I can't take a chance on tenants because they'll ruin my property and destroy it, and it'll take forever to get an eviction. That's just simply not the case. It is a business. It's a very profitable business. Even renting to poor people, it's a very, very profitable endeavor. And I think a final obstacle I'll highlight is we simply do have, well, actually two more. We still do see a lot of illegal discrimination throughout our service area. So I think now people generally know that it's illegal to discriminate on bases like race and sex. But sometimes we will even blatantly see discrimination on the basis of familial status. So they don't want kids or too many kids or kids in upstairs units. And that's just not right on so many levels, but also illegal. So that's another obstacle. And then lastly, I would say not enough supportive services broadly. So transportation, good paying jobs. A good chunk of the eviction cases we see, they lost their job, they're a week behind. And then because they were paycheck to paycheck, now they're here. And who knows if they can get caught up, or the other side is not willing to wait and see if they will. Or it's taking, the 2 years to get on disability. That is the routine. They don't have a home health aide, or there's not enough of them available. Maybe they've irritated the ones that they have, so they no longer have someone that's able to hey, give them the mail and help them with opening the mail, reading the mail, calling people back, things like that. So different social services and lack thereof is a huge barrier to the clients that have case managers. Obviously, that's a wonderful thing, but there's just not enough wages, money, stock available. Poverty is pervasive. Nobody wants to live in poverty, and you can't lift yourself up by the bootstraps if you have no boots. So it's all related. Anything that this community can do to increase the quality and the supply of housing and the housing supports is a huge benefit to the future. The children, like we said, are a huge demographic of people being evicted. And also just to prevent the crisis that exists around us, because it truly is a crisis. And there are everyday ways that we can help. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Anne, for that information. I really appreciate the insight that gives us, that even folks who have their own housing that that they're renting, there's still so many challenges that they face that impacts the total availability of housing in our community. And some of those myths that you busted, I really appreciate that, because you hear so many things floating around that are just not true. And we know that from working with these folks that are receiving services or are at or below the poverty level. We talk about Alice families all the time, so we're constantly talking about the struggles that they face. But those myths can be really harmful, because it makes folks think this is this way, or I don't need to step in, or this is taken care of, or this is protected or something. But quite often those myths can be pretty harmful. So thank you for addressing that. I would like to pass the mic to Leah Werner, and she is an expert on supportive housing. And so I think, one thing that we have talked about through this conversation is there's a lot of folks who need housed. We have a lot of housing units available in the community, but there's still a great need. And certainly not everyone who's waiting for a house needs or might qualify for supportive housing, but supportive housing is going to be a huge part of something that will be very beneficial to our community. So Leah, if you could give us, I know you could probably talk about this for a really long time, but kind of in a nutshell, what is supportive housing? How does it work? we do have some supportive housing available in Lincoln County, but how might that, maybe an increase in supportive housing units, impact what we have available in Lincoln County and improve folks' experience and quality of life who are looking for stable supportive housing?
So can I tell you how unsettling I find it is speaking to an audience and not being able to see everybody's face? So I'm gonna stand up here if you don't mind. Yeah, I would.
All right.
Because these people, I can't interact with them if I can't see them. And no pressure to my panelists. If you do not, I do a ton of public speaking for a living, and this is how I roll. So, but for supportive services, people would not be housed. 1 in 4 people who are eligible to receive a housing choice voucher that Jody referenced actually get one. So people living in the depths of poverty figure it out. And I'm not saying life is great. People are living grand, but people figure it out. The difference in the affordable housing world and the supportive housing world is the services that folks who are living on the street, families who are living in shelter, transition-aged youth who at 18 are dropped off on the corner and they're like, good luck, you don't have a permanent sense of home, desperately need the services to maintain that housing. So we put affordable housing under, we put supportive housing under the affordable housing umbrella. How do we assure that people who are making little to no income can actually afford to live in housing? Jody. We have to provide a subsidy. When you're creating supportive housing for folks who are literally exiting street homelessness, you are assuming 0 income upon entry. There are no entitlement benefits connected. And then the supportive service team hits the ground running with hooking people up with entitlement benefits, SSI, SSDI, cash assistance as applicable, food stamps, Medicaid, etc. Right? So supportive services is the key to keep people housed. But the gate, the portal to get in the housing is subsidy. What is SSI right now? Does anybody know? 900 and what? Like 939. Okay, everybody here got a cell phone. What is 30%? Let's just say we know what we're talking about here. 30% of 939 is what? It's just under $240 a month, okay? So we desperately need a subsidy, but here's the thing, and our attorney, I'm married to an attorney, so everything she said is so true about the attorneys. Here's what we need to know. When you see someone begging for money on the street, that represents 20 to 30% max of homeless folks in your community. But when we think about people experiencing homelessness, we think that face on the street, and I can picture the guys on my exit ramp going home in downtown Columbus. I can picture those faces. We think that's indicative of everybody experiencing homelessness. How many of you are guilty of that? I know I was before I got into this line of work. So here's the thing, there's 2 pressures here. Folks living in a family shelter right now need affordable housing. They might need short-term services, maybe they need long-term services because they're dealing with a severe mental illness. But the issue is affordability. And when we have a growing population, right, and limited and aging housing stock, what happens? Rent goes up. The only way to really take that pressure off your community is to say yes to more housing at every single price point. And the way people can afford it in the affordable housing world is a voucher from Jody. Now, all of you need to wrap your brains around saying yes to the creation of new housing, right? Because we do have aging housing stock that is not going to live forever. So when we think about siting supportive housing, there's 3 buckets. There's the money to build it, there's the money to operate it, and then there's the money to service it. Now the need far exceeds the capacity of these buckets, but the funding is there, right? So how do we maximize these opportunities? We have the low-income housing tax credit program, an IRS program, where investors buy credits to save on their tax liability. It's ridiculously complicated. It will make your head explode, but those monies are there. We have non-tax credit capital sources to build affordable and supportive housing. So check, check, check. Okay, now we have services. How do we pay for the necessary supportive services to help people maintain their housing? How do we pay for it? We pay for it through Medicaid, right? That draws down 70% from the federal government, 30% of the match coming from the state of Ohio. We have resources from your local mental health board. Does anybody know who works at your local mental health board? Your human service levy? It's those resources. And lastly, continuum of care funding that Licking County Coalition for Housing taps into from the homeless planning body. Continuum of care. So yes, resources are limited, but they are there. So we checked the box for capital. We're now checking the box for services. Oh, and now all eyes on Jody. All eyes on Jody. Now, Trina mentioned some subsidy sources that help make supportive housing truly affordable. Once again, we might have to build out an operating pro forma, our feasibility assessment through the lens of people are not paying anything. The unit has to be fully subsidized, right? Fully subsidized until someone brings enough income in via entitlement benefits or gaining meaningful employment to pay that 30%, right? The only way you can tap those capital sources over here, brokered by the state of Ohio, funds that come through HUD down to the state of Ohio, right? Is through taking some of Jody's housing choice vouchers and converting them into project-based vouchers, which is a subsidy that is attached to the unit. A person income qualifies, right? Because that's the total mission alignment. We're talking about targeting people who need affordable housing that meets certain area median income metrics. But the capital funders at the Ohio Housing Finance Agency, at Federal Home Loan Bank of Cincinnati, one of our go-to gap fillers, requires the subsidy be attached to the unit. And why is that? You mentioned 3,000 people. When you open, no, 3,000 people you serve, but when you open the wait list, the floodgates open and 2,000 people, families knocked on her door, right? The subsidy has to be attached to the unit because you cannot hope and pray that your incoming tenant has a housing choice voucher, because your pro forma analysis, can we afford to keep our doors open, cannot be built on a hope and a prayer that your 50-unit building has 50 tenants who magically were awarded a subsidy that they can take anywhere in the community, that a subsidy that is uber hard to get. So those are the three buckets. Now, the financing here is very, very complicated, but the simplified version of this is that I want you all to really take to heart tonight is there's capital resources, there's service dollars, and what's going on with the PHA, right? And then the last piece of the equation is where your power sits. And that is saying yes to this housing, checking our fear, checking our prejudice about what it means to say yes through your zoning appeals process, to say yes at land use review, to say yes to the housing itself. Because there's all this fear. I've been to countless neighborhood meetings where it's like, it'll decrease my property values. Crime will go up. My kids will be victims of crime. The studies do not show this to be true. The anecdote does not show this to be true. Full stop. So what do we know about fear? Liar, liar, pants on fire. False evidence appearing real, right? There are valid concerns when we try to cite supportive housing, and we need to enter into a dialogue of how to meet the needs of all of you and meet the needs of what we're trying to accomplish with the people that we serve. But the resistance that we see at the community level is growing. And it really, 9 times out of 10, is rooted in fear. If you really want to end homelessness, for the guy holding up the sign saying, I'm hungry, please help, God bless you, you have to figure out a way to say yes. Should I drop the mic now?
All right, so much passion. So we've had a lot of conversation about what we have to provide in the community. But I think, we have a lot of conversations, a lot of discussions. Even just at United Way, we provide a lot of opportunity. We like to bring people together to give opportunity for conversation, but we don't want to just talk about things. We want to know, how can we as a community come together to support the organizations that are providing services, support efforts to deepen those services. So before we get to this last question though, I do want to remind everybody that you do have papers on your table to be able to submit your own questions. So if you have questions for the panelists, you can write those down. We'll try our best, depending on time, to get to some of those if possible. So if we can't get to every question, we do apologize for that. But so panelists, if you would like to share, how can the community support your work and support your organization? Get in touch with your organization or services, whatever type of support you would find valuable. What are things that folks can do and leave this room today and start to do that will be more supportive of your work? So we can just start and move down.
For related agencies that work with clients who need rental assistance or need permanent housing, the best thing to do is get them on the wait list. When we do open the list, we advertise. We use social media, we post notices, we reach out to many agencies that we work with. I would say that would be the best way to help them. We have a common cause here. We all want to help in some way, get someone housed and keep them there. So I think the way to do that is open the line of communications. It's been a few years now. Because of COVID, it seems to have changed everything. We used to have housing forums, and this is a surprise to the staff. They don't know it yet, but we're going to start having housing forums again. It would be wonderful if we did, if anyone is welcome, anyone, you can come and sit and we'll do basically the same thing, but we actually put up booths and have lots of information. I almost brought information today to share. Wendy she is one of our coworkers, she couldn't be here tonight, but she has put together the best packet, or what does she call that? Resources, a resources packet that can help the people that we're talking about, can help them in so many ways. There are lots of other areas that we can tap into that we haven't even talked about tonight. So I think the best way that you could possibly help the housing authority fulfill our mission, which sounds like it's your mission too, and that would be to start talking with us and come to our meetings.
Thank you. I did neglect to say 2 opportunities, so I'll just very quickly say those. One, in the city of Newark, we have excellent code enforcement. I should have said some of them here today. So as far as enforcing, like getting these conditions repaired, the more we can fund things like that, to like force, I mean, think, again, like I said, nothing just self-perpetuates, self-enforces, so funding people to, you know, enforce the rules helps. And then subsidized housing itself, we don't have enough of it, but vouchers and just project-based subsidies, that is our wheelhouse because it is protective. I said a lot of doom and gloom about the law because there's a lot of doom and gloom about housing law, but in subsidized housing, you truly have a lot more rights and it is designed for vulnerable people. And that's a wonderful thing. How you can help legal aid, I mean, they don't have me be the fundraiser for a reason. We would love more attorneys, my dream is, that we would have enough, to hire social workers. Cause truly, most of our clients, could use one at least as much as they could use an attorney. So that would obviously be wonderful. But also when you have friends, family, people that are in a bind, please, the moment they get served papers, call. Cause a lot of times, for a lot of reasons, but often because people are traumatized or because they're dealing with domestic violence and a whole host of other things. They, you know, fight, flight, or freeze, and they panic, and then they call after they've missed court, and it's too late for us to do anything. So, don't throw in the towel, you know, tell people, do not throw in the towel until the attorney tells you to throw in the towel, and call us so that we can be the ones advising, this is, you know, what your options are, and let's go forward with that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Anne. Celia, what can the community do to support your work?
Sure, so, I think, you know, we've already in this room taken the first step, and I think that that's just the agreement to be part of an ongoing conversation to educate ourselves about what resources are available in the community and also one another about the importance of permanent supportive housing and what it does for the community. Leah touched on some of the benefits of supportive housing and also touched on a bit of, you know, what we in the industry refer to as NIMBYism, right? I am optimistic that as a community, we'll be able to put our heads together in a solutions-oriented format to tackle this issue. But I will tell you that one of the barriers will be making sure that when it's time to go before city council, right? When it's time to come together, you know, and educate the county about new projects that we're gonna be getting off the ground, we're gonna reach probably be encountered with possibly a groundswell of folks who have a lot of fear, right? And one of the things that you can do to combat that is make our voices just as loud. So that those projects can get off the ground, right? Oftentimes it's that kind of back and forth that as a developer makes these projects dead in the water, right? And sometimes it makes developers say, hey, I'm not gonna do this. I'll go put this community in a community that really wants to see this kind of housing. You've got some really, even outside of us, some other amazing development firms who do incredible work, right? And we want to bring those folks into the community so that our community can continue to experience that value add. The next thing that I would say you can do to support this work is to make sure that you are attending the board meetings for your local housing authority. The housing authority has public requirements as it relates to their board meetings. And so for those board meetings that are advertised as open board meetings, make yourself a part of that conversation and ask the commissioners, what are we doing now that we know that this is a thing? If it sounds like this is something that you'd like to see happen in the community, gauge the commissioners' interest, hear their concerns, right? Invite more community conversation amongst the board of commissioners so that we can gauge the appetite around creating project-based vouchers that will help bring projects like this online. And then lastly, I would just like to say, in addition to figuring out how we're going to address this issue of subsidy, it's also important to make sure that you're taking the opportunity to get behind funding our supportive service partners, like our case managers, who are, burning the midnight oil in many cases to, again, help folks to stay in housing. So as they're having fundraisers and doing that amazing work, as they're doing their capital campaigns, you can get involved in that work, right? And enhance the capacity of those folks who will be embedded in these programs that I very much do believe are going to be coming to this county. So that's what I would say.
All right, thank you. Leah, is there anything that you would like to share with the community? What's something that someone could leave this room tonight and do to support?
Well, I already touched on it a little bit. You say yes, but this is what I want you to think about. We all pay for housing instability. When someone goes to an emergency department because they don't have health insurance for something that would be infinitely better suited going to a regular doctor for, when your insurance premium goes up, it's called indigent care. Your hospitals eat that cost of that service. When your police are taxed with going on runs because people are sleeping outside, guess what? Y'all pay for it. So how can we say yes, which I already put the plug in for? How can we say yes because it's the morally right thing to do? Because it will lead to better outcomes for the individuals serving. It will strengthen the neighborhoods you live in, and it will save your taxpayer money, right? It will. We pay for housing instability with really crappy outcomes. We're paying for it right now. So put the right money in the right pot and say yes. Say yes. When a project is being entertained to go after these resources I referenced, you say yes. You come out in support because now you understand the value of it. You help dispel myths. And if you need more facts and figures and studies to really digest this and be an agent of truth, because we're in the sea of lies right now, I brought my business cards. They're at the front table too with Emma. Please feel free to reach out because this is the time we have to be laser focused on speaking the truth about what this is, what the value is, now more than ever.
All right. So, I'm gonna say something nobody else has said, but we need more housing. And, I'm excited to be around many tables, though, having conversations about that exact topic. I know the foundation is doing amazing work in that arena, and I'm so excited to be a part of that and part of those conversations. I know the county and the city have approved some projects that are coming around the corner. And it's exciting for me, and a lot of people's like, well, those aren't even affordable. Well, no, but we lack of just housing stock, single family homes, apartments, whatever. There's just a lack here in Lincoln County. Again, I've been doing this work a long time, and there feels like there was this 10-year gap of just development, lack of development in Lincoln County. And to see development now is exciting. So the county and the partners in this field are doing some great things. So I did want to mention that. But something you can do for us at LCCH that's really easy is subscribe to our newsletter quarterly. I have some on the back table there. And in that, we'll list things that we can use. So if you're at the grocery store and toilet paper is on sale and you have a couple extra bucks and want to buy a couple packs of toilet paper and drop it off at our office, we will gladly take it. If, for Christmas, you got new pots and pans and you're throwing out your old ones, we'll take those too, and we'll even come pick them up. Anything that you see in your household that you think somebody else could use, set it aside. We'll come and pick up a box of stuff or whatever it is. And that's because when somebody moves into an apartment from a homeless situation, they're moving in with absolutely nothing. And when they walk in these apartments and all that there is a bed, possibly if we can figure that out. But they don't have dish towels to wipe their dishes, or they don't even have dishes to do anything with. That's not home. That's an apartment, but it's not home. And so it's our goal at LCCH to be able to provide a home for folks that they can walk into and feel like, finally, I have a home. So things like that is pretty easy. Support us in VITA is coming up, which is a volunteer income tax assistance program. If you'd like to do taxes, reach out to us, we'll put you to work. But also make sure your clients know about us. We do about 1,600 tax returns a year for free, absolutely free. And that helps support us and get, word out about us. And invite me to be around your service organizations, your tables. I can talk all day about homelessness and housing, and I like to. Because I want people to be aware that it is a huge problem, but it's not an insurmountable problem. And there are solutions that work, and we see it on the daily. So get our newsletter, a lot of times there's stuff, and on May 9th, there's gonna be a huge food truck festival. Come down and get your eat on and support the food truck festival and any other fundraiser that you see the organizations put on. Because those dollars, I can use for anything. My grant dollars are very specific of what I can spend those on. And we're monitored very heavily, which is great because I want to show that we are being good stewards of our dollars. But when we do a fundraising event or we ask for donations, that's so we can provide these stuff for people to walk into their apartment and feel like it's home for the first time. So that's it.
All right, thank you so much. So those of you who had questions, we do have some time to be able to take questions from everyone. Emma, Juan, would you mind collecting those and bringing those up? While they're doing that, I want to make sure that you have the next date on your calendar for when our final follow-up will be March 17th. Easy to remember because it's St. Patrick's Day. 6 p.m. here at the DoubleTree, we'll be having continuing the conversation, what's next. So we'll be joined by Shannon Teal Isom, who is the CEO of the Community Shelter Board. And she's going to be talking about how we can engage further with this, some actionable steps that we can take in order to support our community, support housing services in Licking County, and move forward as we move into the future. So you don't want to miss that. Registration is available on our website, which is unitedwaylc.org. And you can sign up for that now. Again, if you didn't grab one of these yellow papers with some definitions, it is helpful just to keep as a reminder for you. All right, so we've got some questions here. We just sort through them. So this is just going to be a question in general to the panel, kind of a follow-up of what we just talked about. But someone asks, what are the immediate needs to make, whether it's developing new housing or providing more supports to existing housing, what are some immediate needs that folks can do? Is it volunteering? Is it donations? Is it networking? What is the kind of the most pressing thing? Anybody have a starting point?
In addition to what we've already said.
I know we've covered a lot. Yeah, I know.
I'm racking my brain. I mean, there is a call to advocacy right now. A lot of the funding that supports our work is in the crosshairs. And I will say this. I meet with legislators all the time, and this is some insider baseball I think is really helpful to know. When they get 3 to 5 calls on one singular issue, it's a 5-alarm fire. And why is that? Because everybody is assuming everybody else is calling, when in fact, no one is calling. So your senator, your representative, your state representatives, your state senator, if you get 5 of your neighbors to say, you know what, we're calling today, and this is the consistent messaging, making sure you have the facts at hand, your representative will be like, what is going on? And will staff it out. When I learned that the threshold was that painfully low, I was like, every day, people, it takes maybe 10 minutes to call everybody on the state and federal level. Who represents you? 10 minutes, right? So know that they will actually put energy behind it if they get 3 to 5 calls on the same issue.
All right, thank you. Be an advocate. That is one of the pillars of United Way. So thank you. So we have a question just for some clarity. Jody, what specifically is the county government's role in the housing authority? And you mentioned your board meetings. When are those? Folks would like to jump.
I was talking, actually, I was talking about, not the board meetings, I was talking about the other community meetings that we have, like the housing forum. But we do have open board meetings. They're the fourth Wednesday of the month. It's not free to talk during the board meeting about the numerous subjects, because you have to remember the board of commissioners are volunteers. Many of them have jobs and they're there on their lunch period. So there is a time limit for presentation. If you want to talk about a particular topic or give a presentation, it's so many minutes and you have to complete a form ahead of time. Now, I don't understand the question about the county. We're a political subdivision of the state of Ohio. And county involvement or even city involvement in different functions, or like renovating our 7-story apartment building. They've been wonderful. We go through the same process that any developer would go through. Is that I'm not sure who asked the question, but am I answering it? Evidently, to your satisfaction. Okay.
All right, thank you. I guess I could have you could have kept the microphone because we'll give another one here for you. So someone's curious, if a person is in need of a housing voucher, do they come to your organization to get that? What's the process for someone to obtain a voucher?
Okay. We operate by a waiting list, and that's pretty much the case with all 3,300 housing authorities or housing commissions across the United States, because they are so much in demand. So we have a closed wait list. And when we're about to open the wait list, we advertise, like I said earlier, through all social media, post notices and contact related agencies. At the time the wait list is open, the person or family would have to fill out an application, get on the wait list, and then anyone is welcome to apply. And once your name comes up, then you go through the process at that time. That's the only way. We have no emergency assistance, I'm sorry to say. I wish we did, but we don't.
All right, thank you. And Celia has some comments as well.
Right, so that is for the housing choice voucher. For project vouchers, it's important to, if you have someone who you've identified who is interested in housing where there is a project-based voucher, you're gonna wanna go directly to the project. So Beacon 360, we have a long list of our communities available on our website, and you can submit an inquiry card that way. And then I think you all might have a bit of a different process.
Yeah, so our process is a little different just because you have to be literally homeless. So if you know somebody that's literally homeless, they just need to call our office and then we will get them onto the prioritization list. And we don't necessarily do a first come, first serve. We kind of triage and we say, okay, is this person literally on the street? Are they maybe elderly or youth or a specific population, so that we can get the most vulnerable into programs the quickest. So ours is a little different, but we send people all the time down to the Beacon 360 properties and help them with the applications and help them fill out the form. So if anybody has, a need like that, they can call the office and we have staff that can help them through that process.
I will also say our wait list is significantly different than the housing authorities. So our average wait list per project for elderly units is 26. So there's 26 folks on average for our elderly communities, and for our multifamily communities, it's 143 as of this morning. So it's a little bit shorter than the housing authority. So at the point that they would need to close their wait list, project-based vouchers are a viable option, and they don't have to have a voucher in hand, right? They just come and fill out the application, and then they're able to go through the eligibility process to determine whether or not they will qualify for that housing.
All right, thank you. Anne, we'll give you a question here. We have one directed towards you. So you had mentioned earlier that there are 3 things that are automatically necessary for someone to do if they're served an eviction notice. Could you go back through what those 3 things are, just for everyone's information?
Yeah, I don't think I said the 3, so that would be all. So removing all your stuff. And ideally, if there's going to be stuff that you abandon, you tell them in writing, I'm abandoning this. Try not to do that too much, because then they might charge you a cleaning fee to remove it, but that's 1, getting rid of your stuff. 2 is returning the keys. That's a good way to prove you're returning possession, and therefore the court doesn't need to. And then 3rd would be giving a forwarding address in writing. And this one I do spend time harping or advising clients on, because a lot of times they'll say, well, they know, or I told him, or I don't have one. Regardless, that is critical, A, because the law requires it, but B, if they're going to sue you afterwards down the line, or they're in the process of suing you, they need to know where, or you're just gonna not be served that. And every week we see people get default judgments against them because they're not served properly, or they didn't respond because they didn't think there was any point. But anyway, those 3 things: return the keys, give a forwarding address, remove their stuff, and then prove it all.
All right, thank you. Jody, I apologize if you mentioned this and I missed it. Someone did ask, you had mentioned some upcoming housing forums. How would folks find out information about those forums, when they're available, when to attend? That
We
kind of
will
thing?
definitely use social media. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Usually it has, the way we did it previously, pre-COVID, it was once a year. It's a big forum, and how you would find out about it, it would be through social media, posting notices at related agencies, advertising. The same way we do with any function that would be for the community, waitlist opening.
Okay, thank you. And so you mentioned waitlist opening, that's posted on social media as well. That was another question. Okay, so when the waitlist is open, that would be posted on social media. Is there a website where you post information as well?
Yes.
Or
Our website,
okay,
livingmha.org.
livingmha.org. So you can check there as well for information about that. Let's see here. So there was a couple of questions about this. So we mentioned, I think everybody up here, well, maybe not you, Ann, but everybody up here in terms of more geared toward the housing services specifically, had talked about project vouchers. And so some of the process of a voucher becoming a project voucher, what is that? Is that like a process that an organization or an agency itself initiates, or what does that process look like? I'm sure who wants to take that one.
So typically, project-based vouchers are authorized through the housing authority, and so I'll hand it back to Jody to talk about whatever allocation they're receiving in project-based versus housing choice vouchers. And so that would be their probably wheelhouse.
Okay, Jody.
The housing authority would use a percentage of their housing choice vouchers as project-based vouchers. We haven't done that yet. we had two different platforms, Section 8 platform, which is where the housing choice vouchers come from, Section 9 platform, which is public housing. And that's what we're getting out of right now, some public housing. We did it through a repositioning. It's called a RAD, Section 18 Small PHA Blend. It has tax credits on it, and Leah is right, it makes your head explode. And I thank God we only have one project like that, because I don't know that I could do it again. So that's already project-based vouchers. In doing that, we became a co-developer, and the funds will go into another nonprofit. We have 6 nonprofits now within the house, 8 nonprofits within the housing authority due to this repositioning. And so I know that one of my goals is to try and convince our board that that developer fee we should take and do our part to provide more affordable housing, which possibly we could go ahead and put our own vouchers on the property. And that makes it project-based. There are housing authorities that do, and we're one of them. We're approached by other developers with an idea to go ahead and provide more affordable housing with the agreement that we give X amount of vouchers towards the project and make it project-based. They do it that way a lot.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. So we mentioned a lot of meetings that we should be attending. Are there any other board meetings that you would recommend that we attend outside of maybe, the ones that we talked about? City councils, that kind of thing, but other meetings that we should know about? Obviously, you all are a step ahead because you're at this one, so that's important.
It's important to be on the lookout for when developments do come out, because there will be requirements around community participation, approaching city council and things like that. So I touched on it, but your voices in those meetings, and oftentimes it comes up again and again and again. So your voice is consistently in those meetings, as loud as any fear, are critically important. So I would say if you're going to prioritize your meeting attendance, it would be with the Housing Authority's Board of Commissioners right now. And then second to that, once developments do start coming off the ground, making sure that you understand what the developer is proposing, that you agree with that. If you do agree with that, make your way to city council, make your way to town hall conversations that are being had about those proposed developments. And if you like what you hear, if you think it would be a value for the community, please say that and bring your friends and family.
All right, thank you. And this is a tough one. We talk about this a lot, not just in housing conversations, but in a lot of our conversations throughout the forums that we have. There's a lot of stigma around folks who are housing insecure, stigma around Section 8 housing, whether that's just from the community, landlords, whoever. I don't know if there's a good way to address that, but does anyone have any advice about how we might combat that stigma or what we can do to make things more accessible for people?
I think first we have to understand what homelessness looks like, right? No one wants to be homeless. No one wants to have experienced complex trauma, right? And I think first there just needs to be just an understanding that no one wants this. In terms of understanding, what the stigma is, most folks are living paycheck to paycheck, right? Most folks are living paycheck to paycheck in our community, especially in these days and times. It's a very slippery slope into economic instability that could ultimately make its way into an issue of homelessness for you or someone that you know. And so I think understanding that people don't want to live this way and just approaching these conversations with an open mind is what's necessary.
Okay, sure.
Again, just invite organizations like mine around the tables to your service organizations, your Rotaries, your Kiwanis, any of those. Have people with former lived experience of homelessness talk at your meetings or talk to people. One thing I can pride myself on at LCCH is we have staff with lived experience. And some of my best case managers, I have licensed case managers that are amazing, but I also have people with lived experience that do amazing work every day. And they can talk so real about what homelessness is like because they've been there, they've done it. And so letting them speak so that we can break those stigmas a little bit and say, homelessness doesn't look like the guy on the side of the street. It looks like people living in their car and showering at Planet Fitness and then going to gym, to work. It looks like people living in a storage unit because they lost their apartment. It looks so different to every situation. And until we consider the fact that every single human that is homeless is exactly that, a human being that has a story. And not all stories are even close to being the same. And until we give that each person's an individual and we tailor their services and tailor their results to that person, it's not gonna work. I can't stick somebody that's holding a sign on the street into an apartment and say, good luck, we're gonna help you with a month, and then you're on your own. It doesn't work. But I do have people that come in that are living in a storage unit or their vehicle, and I can say, here's a deposit, here's your first month's rent, you're stable, good luck, and call us if you need us. So we have to make sure that we're not stereotyping, that we're trying to, talk about the stigma that's attached. Because homelessness does not look the same for each individual. Everybody's story is different.
I think the other thing, go see some units, go talk to some tenants. We have this image in our head about what it is. And when you go to a supportive housing development specifically, you're like, oh, it's an apartment building. It's an apartment building. Talk to the neighbors next door. Talk to the neighbors across the street. What is it like to have these people as your neighbors? So dispel the myth means you have to touch it and talk to people and walk around. And that is the best way to ease fear and to really understand we're talking about developing apartments where people have services on site.
All right, thank you. Let's see, we do still have several other questions, so we're probably not going to be able to get to all of them. I don't want to keep us here all night. Let's see, so we had a couple of comments too, maybe not questions, about engaging with folks. We talked about engaging in other meetings. Also, several of the panelists up here had mentioned being an advocate, advocating to your elected officials. And I do want to say, we did have a lot of folks who were interested in coming, but there are some conflicts tonight. The city council meeting is tonight. So we have been, having a lot of great conversations with folks throughout different levels of our community that are here. But someone had mentioned that they would love for some of you guys to come and speak to council. So I think advocacy at all levels is important, and that's the point of what we're getting at here. And then also, I just want to really reiterate, Jody was mentioning that it takes a lot of communication. I think communicating between organizations, getting to know each other, getting to know what each other does, maintaining that communication is so important. So just the time that you took tonight to do that, the time that the panelists took out of their schedules to do that. Our goal at United Way, again, is to be a convener, to bring folks together, to provide a dedicated space for conversation where we're talking with each other and not talking at each other, talking about each other, talking down to each other, which so often happens in these, whatever topic we're talking about, that seems to happen. And so making sure that we're being very present with each other, that we're being intentional, that we're listening. That's a skill that unfortunately many of us neglect, is our listening skills, and really, working to collaborate on, reaching the goals that we all share, because when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, we all want the same things for our community. How we get to those things might be different, but there is certainly common ground. So thank you, again, to all of you for your time, for your comments. Thank you to those of you who came to attend. I do want to make sure that you have some upcoming events on your schedules. So just about a month, or a little less than a month away, we have our Community Services Expo. This will be held at the YMCA here in Newark, in the Mitchell Gymnasium. We are still, if you are a representative of an organization, whether that's a 501c3, a public organization, or some other tax exempt organization, we would love to have you participate as an exhibitor. There is no cost. And for the general public, it is free to attend. You'll be able to interact with the organizations that are there to learn what services they have, learn about volunteer opportunities, learn about ways that you can support them, or if they have a career available or something like that. It will be from 4 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. again on February 11th at the YMCA. Our next Community Partners Council Forum will be on reentry. So we'll be joined by folks from the Reentry Coalition. I'm blanking on the panel. I just had a meeting with them earlier today, but there will be a really great panel with folks that are providing services to those who are reentering after incarceration, and providing services to them. So you don't want to miss that. That's part of our Community Partners Council monthly forum series on the second Wednesday of every month. And those are held at Licking County Aging Partners. Someone was here somewhere. And then our annual Impact and Awards breakfast is coming up on April 8th. That is our United Way annual meeting and our time to congratulate those who have gone above and beyond in their campaigns, as well as award winners at our funded partners who are exemplary volunteers and uphold the mission of those organizations. And then returning again is the CIRC conference. That's the Community Intercultural Relations Conference. That will be held on April 17th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Information is coming out about that, as well as ticketing and other stuff. So you want to be on the lookout for that. Tickets will be available on our website very soon, but want to make sure you've got that on your calendar. So again, we are so grateful for you being here. Please don't miss the third follow-up to this conversation. Again, that's March 17th at 6 p.m. here at the DoubleTree. If you want more information or to get in contact with us, you can visit our website at unitedwaylc.org. Let's give a big thank you to our panelists. And with that, we hope you all have a wonderful evening. Please stay warm. It's only going to get colder. Speaking of that, I'm going to give a quick plug here. Speaking of staying warm, as you know, an emergency warming center mobilizes when the temperature gets low in this community. We are coming up to a big stretch of days where it's going to be open because of the temperature. So if you are available to volunteer, if you know of someone who's available to volunteer, if you have things that you can donate to support them, please get in touch with Emma. She's back there at the table. They're in desperate need of volunteers to work shifts at the warming center. This is a critical service that's provided to the community. There's a lot of organizations that come together to make this happen and provide that support, but it takes volunteers to actually be there and operate the warming center. So if that's something that you would be available to participate in, if you know of someone who would be available to participate in, share it with your friends, share it with your church groups, share it with your coworkers, share it with your neighbors. Really in need of volunteers. So again, Emma is the one with the information on that back there. And now with that, please stay warm, please stay safe, and we will see you next time. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, everybody. Yeah, now, exactly.